The rain does not fall here. It attacks. Each drop hits stone like a tiny hammer. The wind screams across the wall so loud that two men standing side by side cannot hear each other breathe. This is the edge of the Roman world. This is Hadrian's wall. Early 2nd century. Cold. Grey. Endless. On one side of the wall, Rome. On the other side, tribes moving through fog. Faces painted. Blades ready. Waiting. But look closely at the soldiers holding that wall. Look at their faces. Not all of them were born under this sky. Some of them grew up where the sun burns white and merciless. Where sand cuts your feet. Where olive trees grow instead of pine. Where the sea smells different. Where the language in the streets is not Celtic, but Latin spoken with an African rhythm. Some of the men freezing on this wall were born in Africa. And their story breaks the version of Rome most people still believe. You were told Rome was white. Marble white. Toga white. Europe only. But the truth is harder. And much more dangerous. Tonight, we walk through rain and blood. Through bone and battlefield. Through graves that still carry the memory of warmer soil. And by the end, the Rome you thought you understood will not exist anymore. Stay with us till the end for valuable insights. Like, subscribe, and share to support the channel. The wall stretches across northern Britain like a scar. Stone after stone, mile after mile, it cuts the island in two. Built under Emperor Hadrian, it stands as a message carved into earth. This is as far as Rome will go. But walls are not just built to keep people out. They are built because someone is afraid. Beyond the wall live tribes Rome calls barbarians. They move through forests and hills that the legions never fully control. They know the land. They strike fast. They disappear into mist. Every night, torches burn along the ramparts. Every morning, soldiers wake up wet, cold, and tired. Armor rusts. Leather cracks. Breath turns to fog in the air. And standing there, shield locked, spear ready, is a man whose childhood looked nothing like this place. He was not born in Britain. He was born under the African sun. Maybe in Leptis Magna, a bright port city on the coast of North Africa. White buildings. Blue sea. Busy markets filled with spices and voices from 3 continents. Maybe in Carthage. A city rebuilt after fire and war, now powerful again. A place of traders, soldiers, and proud Roman citizens. In those cities, winter feels like a soft breeze. The sky is wide and golden. The air smells of salt and dust. Now imagine that same man standing in freezing rain, at the very end of the known world. Why is he here? Because Rome does not care where you were born. Rome cares what you can do. The empire is huge. From Spain to Syria. From North Africa to the forests of Germany. It cannot defend itself with Italians alone. So it pulls men from everywhere. If you can ride a horse fast, Rome wants you. If you can throw a spear hard, Rome wants you. If you can stand in a shield wall without running, Rome wants you. Africa became one of the richest lands for soldiers. Men from Mauritania were famous for cavalry. Fast riders. Light armor. Deadly with javelins. They could strike and vanish before heavy infantry could react. Commanders noticed. And soon, African units were sent across the empire, even to the coldest frontier of all. To Britain. Think about that journey. Weeks on ships across the Mediterranean. Months marching through Gaul. Crossing the Channel into a land of grey skies and endless rain. Local Britons stare at him. His skin is darker. His accent different. His gods not the same. But inside the Roman army, those differences matter less than loyalty. He swears an oath to the emperor. He carries the eagle standard. He becomes Roman. The modern world talks about race as if it was always the main line dividing people. But here, on this wall, another line matters more. Are you Roman? Or are you not? On this side of the stone, Roman. On the other side, enemy. That is the rule. The rain keeps falling. The wind keeps howling. And under that grey sky stands a man whose bones still remember the heat of Africa. He grips his weapon tighter. Because tonight, the tribes might attack. And if they do, it will not matter where he was born. Only whether he holds the line. Stone forgets. Stories change. But bones do not lie. Years pass. Empires rise and fall. Walls crack. Forts sink into soil. The soldiers who once stood in the freezing rain are buried and lost. For centuries, people imagine Roman Britain in a simple way. White soldiers. White citizens. A small, distant corner of Europe ruled by Rome. Clean. Easy. Comfortable. But the ground holds a different story. In the city the Romans called Eboracum, the place we now call York, workers once opened a stone coffin buried deep under the earth. Inside was a woman. She was not poor. She was not forgotten. Around her body were signs of wealth. Fine jewelry. Beautiful glassware. And most striking of all, bracelets carved from elephant ivory. Ivory. That means Africa. Elephants do not walk through the forests of Britain. Someone hunted those animals far to the south. Someone cut the tusks. Someone shaped them. Someone carried them across deserts, across seas, across markets. And those ivory bangles ended up in a grave in northern Britain. For a long time, people made an easy assumption. She must have been a local woman, they said. A wealthy Romano-British lady. Upper class. Probably pale-skinned. It felt safe to think that way. Then science changed everything. Modern researchers looked at her bones again. They studied her skull carefully. They examined the shape of her face. But more important than that, they tested her teeth. Inside teeth is something powerful. Chemical memory. When you grow up in a place, the water you drink and the food you eat leave tiny chemical marks in your body. These marks stay there for life. They are like fingerprints of the earth. The tests showed something impossible to ignore. This woman did not grow up in cold Britain. Her chemical profile pointed to a warmer climate. A Mediterranean world. And the shape of her skull suggested North African ancestry. Let that sink in. A wealthy woman, buried with honor in Roman Britain, likely came from North Africa, or had deep roots there. She was not a slave. She was not hidden. She was elite. She lived at the top of society in one of the empire's most distant provinces. That one grave cracks the simple picture apart. Now imagine walking through Roman York 2,000 years ago. The streets are muddy. Soldiers march past. Traders shout in Latin, Greek, and local tongues. Smoke rises from bathhouses. And in that crowd you see a Syrian merchant, a Spanish officer, a North African woman wearing ivory, a British farmer speaking broken Latin. All inside one city. The empire was not a sealed European box. It was a network. Ships crossed the Mediterranean every day. Grain from Africa fed Rome. Olive oil flowed north. Soldiers moved constantly. Families moved with them. When an African soldier finished his service in Britain, he might stay. He might marry. He might build a life there. And his children would grow up under grey skies, even if his bones remembered the sun. This is what the earth is telling us. Not through poetry. Not through legend. Through chemistry. Through skeletons. Through graves. The woman in the stone coffin forces a hard truth. Africans were not rare visitors. They were part of the system. Part of the cities. Part of the army. Part of the elite. The myth of a single-color empire begins to break. But graves are quiet. The real noise comes from the battlefield. Because if civilians could travel across the empire and rise in status, what about the men who carried swords? What about the African soldiers riding through fog with Roman armor on their backs? What happens when one of them stops being just a soldier and starts becoming something far more dangerous? The Roman army was always hungry. Hungry for land. Hungry for power. Hungry for men. An empire that stretches across 3 continents cannot survive without bodies. Strong bodies. Fast bodies. Loyal bodies. Italy alone was not enough. So Rome did something ruthless and brilliant. It turned conquered people into conquerors. When Rome defeated a tribe, it did not only take their land. It took their sons. Young men who once fought against Rome were now given armor, weapons, and a choice. Serve or disappear. North Africa became one of the most valuable sources of soldiers in the empire. Especially the Mori, the people from Mauritania, in what is now Morocco and Algeria. They were famous for one thing: cavalry. Fast riders. Light armor. Javelins that struck with deadly precision. They did not fight like heavy Roman infantry. They moved like wind across open ground. They could charge, strike, and vanish before an enemy line even reacted. Roman generals saw the advantage immediately. Soon, Moorish cavalry units became some of the most respected forces in the army. Now imagine them in Britain. Imagine a young rider who grew up under a burning African sun. He learned to ride before he could fully walk. He hunted across dry hills. He trained in open land. Now he is stationed at the edge of the world. Fog instead of dust. Rain instead of heat. Forests instead of open plains. The locals stare at him. His skin is darker. His hair different. His accent heavy. But inside the army, something else matters more. Can he fight? Can he hold formation? Can he obey orders? If yes, he is Roman. That is the rule. Records show that Moorish units were stationed along Hadrian's wall. Inscriptions carved in stone mention them. Official documents list their presence. These were not myths. These were real men. They patrolled the frontier. They chased raiders. They guarded forts. They stood in shield walls next to men from Spain, Gaul, and Syria. And sometimes, one of them rose higher than anyone expected. His name was Lucius Quietus. He was not just a soldier. He was born into Moorish royalty. His father was a tribal chief who chose alliance with Rome instead of endless war. That decision changed everything. Lucius grew up between 2 worlds. African by birth. Roman by training. He commanded Moorish cavalry units. Units likely drawn from his own people. Units that trusted him. Under Emperor Trajan, one of Rome's greatest military leaders, Lucius Quietus became unstoppable. He fought in brutal wars in Dacia, modern Romania, His cavalry crushed enemies, ran down retreating forces, and turned battles into massacres. Then came campaigns in the east, against the powerful Parthian Empire. Again, Quietus delivered victory. Ancient writers describe him as fierce, relentless, ruthless. He did what Rome demanded, and Rome rewarded him. He became a senator. Think about that. A man from North Africa, commanding cavalry, now sitting among Rome's highest political elite. He was given control of provinces, authority over cities, power over life and death. Some sources even suggest that near the end of Emperor Trajan's life, Quietus was considered as a possible successor. An African-born commander? Almost emperor. The idea alone shakes the simple version of history. But Rome's system was brutal in both directions. It could lift a man high and crush him just as fast. When Trajan died, a new emperor took power, Hadrian. Politics shifted overnight. Lucius Quietus was too powerful, too loyal to the previous regime, too respected by soldiers. He became dangerous. And in Rome, dangerous men do not survive long. He was stripped of position, then executed. The same machine that raised him, destroyed him. His story reveals something uncomfortable. Rome did not block men like him because of skin color. It blocked them because of power. If you were useful, you could rise. If you threatened the wrong people, you were removed. That was the true rule. And yet, Lucius Quietus was not the final step. He was only the beginning. Because a few decades later, something even more shocking would happen. Not a near emperor. Not a general. An actual emperor. Born in Africa. Seizing the throne with legions behind him. And ruling the entire Roman world. Power in Rome was never soft. It was taken. It was defended with blood. And sometimes, it came from places the Senate never expected. In the year 193 AD, the Roman Empire was in chaos. An emperor had been murdered. The throne was empty. Soldiers across the empire were angry, restless, ready to fight. And far from Rome, in North Africa, a governor watched carefully. His name was Septimius Severus. He was born in Leptis Magna, a rich city on the North African coast. The same bright port city where ships moved between Africa, Italy, and the East. A city of traders, Latin speakers, and deep Roman loyalty. Severus was not an outsider to Rome's system. He was educated in Roman law. He spoke Latin perfectly. He rose step by step through military and political ranks. But he was African by birth. His accent was said to be noticeable. His family roots were not Italian. And now, as the empire trembled, he made a decision that would change history. He declared himself emperor. Not with speeches. With legions. The army in the province of Pannonia, modern-day Balkans, supported him. Soldiers trusted strength. And Severus promised strength. He marched toward Rome. Other men also claimed the throne. The empire was splitting apart. Civil war was coming. But Severus moved fast. Faster than his enemies expected. When he entered Rome, the Senate had little choice. They accepted him. An African-born man now wore the purple. He ruled the entire Roman Empire. From Britain to Egypt. From Spain to Syria. Let that image settle. The empire that many imagine as purely European was now led by a man born in Africa. And he did not rule quietly. Severus was hard. Disciplined. Suspicious. He increased soldiers' pay to secure their loyalty. He strengthened the army. He reduced the Senate's power. He made it clear the army was the true backbone of Rome. And he never forgot the frontier. In 208 AD, Septimius Severus did something no emperor was required to do. He personally traveled to Britain. Think about that. The emperor of the Roman world, ruler of millions, standing in the cold mud of northern Britain. Why? Because the tribes beyond Hadrian's wall were rising again. Raids, violence, unrest. Severus wanted total control. He marched north with massive forces. Tens of thousands of soldiers. Roads were repaired. Forts strengthened. Supplies shipped in huge numbers. The emperor was now walking the same land where African cavalry once rode patrol. The same rain fell on him. The same wind cut through his cloak. But this time, the man under that cloak ruled the world. Ancient sources describe brutal campaigns. Forests burned. Villages destroyed. Tribes pushed back deep into Scotland. It was not clean. It was not gentle. It was Rome. Severus did not see Britain as distant. He saw it as part of his empire. Part of his responsibility. Part of his legacy. And here is something even more powerful. He died in Britain. In the city of Eboracum, modern York, in 211 AD. An African-born emperor took his last breath under a cold British sky. His body was later returned south for burial. But think about the symbol. The empire was not divided by simple lines of color. It was connected by loyalty, ambition, and power. From the sun of North Africa to the fog of Britain, one man ruled it all. And when he died, he left his sons with a warning. Be harmonious. Enrich the soldiers. Scorn all other men. Cold advice. Roman advice. His dynasty would not last long. His sons would fight each other. Blood would follow. But the fact remained. An African-born Roman had sat on the throne. Not as a symbol. Not as a token. But as a conqueror. And if that truth feels uncomfortable to the simple version of history, good. Because the frontier was never simple. And what happened after Severus would show something even deeper. By the 3rd century, Africa was not just supplying soldiers. It was shaping the empire's future. Stand in Britain in the 3rd century. Close your eyes. Listen carefully. You will not hear one language. You will hear many. Latin, yes. The language of orders and law. But also Celtic dialects from local tribes. Greek from traders. African accents from soldiers and officials. The empire was not one sound. It was a storm of voices. And in that storm, a new identity was being formed. Not British. Not African. Not Syrian. Roman. This is what many people misunderstand. Modern thinking often divides the world by skin, by race, by continent. But Rome divided the world differently. Are you inside the system? Or outside it? That was the line. Citizenship mattered more than color. Loyalty mattered more than origin. Service mattered more than ancestry. An African soldier who served 25 years in the legions could earn citizenship. He could retire with land. He could marry legally. His children would be Roman citizens by birth. Now imagine that child. His father grew up under African sun. He grows up under British reign. He speaks Latin at home. Maybe a few African words from his father. Maybe some local British slang from friends. What is he? He is Roman. His identity is built by the empire itself. This mixing was not rare. Archaeology shows Roman forts in Britain filled with objects from far away. North African pottery, Middle Eastern religious altars, Mediterranean oil lamps. At one fort along Hadrian's wall, inscriptions show the presence of Syrian archers. At another, Moorish cavalry. The frontier was not isolated. It was global. Rome moved people like pieces on a massive board. Soldiers finished service and stayed. Merchants followed armies. Families reunited across continents. Even religion traveled. African cults, Eastern mystery religions, Roman gods, local British deities, all mixing, all adapting. The empire did not erase differences. It led them. And over time, something powerful happened. The idea of Roman became bigger than geography. It became a system of law, a military structure, a promise of order. You could be born in Africa and die in Britain, and still belong fully to Rome. That does not mean life was equal. Power still mattered. Class still mattered. The wealthy had advantages everywhere. But race, in the modern sense, was not the wall. Citizenship was. And this changes how we understand Hadrian's wall itself. The wall was not built to keep out people of a different skin color. It was built to mark political control, to separate Roman law from tribal independence, to show power. When African soldiers stood on that wall, they were not strangers defending someone else's homeland. They were defending their empire. An empire that had given them rank, pay, status. An empire that could make a Moorish rider a general. An African governor an emperor. This is the deeper truth. Rome was brutal. Rome was expansionist. Rome crushed resistance. But Rome was also connected, interwoven, complicated. The clean marble statues you see today were once painted in bright colors. The empire itself was the same, painted in many shades. And yet, over time, stories simplify. They smooth rough edges. They erase complexity. They turn something vast into something narrow. But the stones of Hadrian's wall still stand. And beneath them lie bones that remember. Go back to the wall. Stand there again. Feel the wind. Hear it move across the stone like a warning. Almost 2,000 years have passed. The legions are gone. The forts are broken. The empire that once ruled 3 continents is only a memory. But Hadrian's wall still stands. Tourists walk along it now. They take pictures. They imagine Roman soldiers as pale faces under iron helmets. They imagine a simple frontier. A clean story. But the ground knows better. Under that soil are bones. And those bones remember warmth. They remember African sun. They remember long journeys across the sea. They remember hooves striking wet British earth. History is often told in straight lines. Europe here. Africa there. Borders fixed. Identities simple. But the Roman Empire was not a straight line. It was a web. And Britain, cold, distant Britain, was tied directly to North Africa by blood, by loyalty, by ambition. An African woman buried with ivory in York. Moorish cavalry patrolling the frontier. Lucius Quietus rising so high he made emperors nervous. Septimius Severus ruling the world and dying in Britain. These are not modern inventions. They are recorded, carved into stone, written in ancient texts, tested in laboratories. The idea that ancient Europe was isolated, untouched, uniform, it collapses under evidence. Rome moved people constantly. Soldiers did not serve near their homes. They were sent far away on purpose. It reduced rebellion. It built unity. It forced identity to change. And when a young man from North Africa stood on Hadrian's wall, freezing under grey skies, he was not an outsider visiting Europe. He was Rome. When Septimius Severus marched north to crush rebellion, he was not a foreign ruler in a distant land. He was the emperor of that land. The empire did not see itself as divided by continents. It saw itself as divided by power. Inside the system. Or outside it. That is what the wall truly marked. Not race. Not color. Control. Law. Authority. And the soldiers who guarded it came from every corner of the known world. This truth does not weaken Rome's story. It makes it stronger. More real. More human. Empires are built by movement. By migration. By ambition that crosses oceans. The men who froze in Britain had once sweated under African sun. The same hands that held shields in northern fog once held reins in desert heat. And when they died, their bones carried that full journey within them. The wall still stands. Silent. Unmoved. But if you listen carefully, it does not tell a story of isolation. It tells a story of connection. Of an empire that stretched so wide that a child born in Leptis Magna could grow up to command in Britain. Of a system so vast that Africa and Britain were not opposites, they were neighbors inside the same political world. History is not clean. It is layered. It is uncomfortable. It forces us to accept that the past was more complex than the stories we inherited. The rain still falls on Hadrian's wall. The wind still howls. And somewhere beneath those stones lies the memory of soldiers whose lives crossed continents. They held the line. They carried Rome on their backs. And their story is still written in the earth, waiting for anyone brave enough to read it. If you enjoy dark untold history, subscribe because we uncover what others won't.